Okay, welcome everyone. Today we are going to continue reading on the Feng Youlan's A Short History of Chinese Philosophy. So today is August 3rd, and we are on chapter 11. The title is The Later Mohist. And then next week, we are doing Bhagavad Gita, and the week after, August 17th, we will do the Yin Yang School. I know a lot of people probably interested on that. That's talking basic two things. One is about 5 elements. Another one is the Book of Change. But Book of Change, we probably will do it according to the text. Or to the chapter 15, okay, because it's happened later time, okay, as a summary, okay. So just for the future. And today's subject is chapter 11, the later Mohist. Okay. Before we officially start, we already kind of discussed the Mohist. And I hope, is anybody have no clue who is Mozi or what is Mohist? You can just say, I don't know. Yeah. Srivata? Or you have no
Yeah.
idea who is Mozi?
I think maybe are we talking about Mao, Maotse? Is it the same thing or is this different?
Oh, Motzu. Okay, some spelling. Okay, so
The communist leader? Is,
no, no,
is
no,
this...
no, 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 no,
Oh,
no,
okay,
no,
okay.
no. Okay, no. Okay, forget about it. That's an ancient time. Ancient time. Okay, I
Okay,
will
okay.
make sure, since you don't know, I will make sure you don't get confused. Great that you talk about this. It's not Mao. Okay, it's not communist. Yeah. Well, some people said the Mozi is early communist. Okay.
I see.
When we say early means 2,300 years ago. Okay. Before Karl Marx. Okay. Let's put it this way. Okay. Well, we will talk about this briefly because we already talked about this part in May. Okay. And then since you don't know who is Mozi, and then I believe some people probably already forget. So I will spend some time to review, okay, who is Mozi, and then we will, that's the first part I will do, make sure we can continue. But again, you don't need to know the first part of Mozi well to continue today because the subject is totally different. Okay, so before I go to the philosophy part, and I would like to, the book we use called A Short History of Chinese Philosophy, and by Feng Youlan, okay, and written in 1947 when he teach in the University of Pennsylvania. So about the person, and then Feng Youlan, this book, okay, he said, okay, he's tried to reconciling traditional Chinese thought with the method and the concern of modern Western philosophy. I agree with him because every time I prepare my PowerPoint, I will read his text in detail. And I do have this feeling because a lot of texts I have read before, okay, long time before, but his writing is very different than traditional reading, and I find out it's quite helpful. And I strongly recommend, you spend some time to read the text, and then in the middle page, they have a PDF file for free. You are welcome to download and read online. And then again, I suggest you to buy the book. And I find out it's available in Amazon. So you can buy the Chinese version on this site, okay? Or you can buy the English version, okay? So if you know both, you can buy this one, okay, which is one page is Chinese, one page is English. I know some people doing this one. If you are very interested, I know some people doing this, buying the complete version of History of Chinese Philosophy, which is volume 1 and the volume 2 total will be, I think it's over 1,600 pages. It's a lot. Okay, so so that's the book, and then total is 28 chapter, and I'm going to chapter by chapter, and each meetup I'm going to spend 2 hours and talking about one chapter. Okay, so right now we are on chapter 11, and again, each chapter is, I would say, independent. So if you miss some, or you are new today, you are welcome to jump into any chapter. So you can read before the meetup, so you can ask a lot of questions you don't know, or you can read after the meetup, so you can easier to read. And only the book is even it's old, but I think one thing just want to everybody to pay attention is the Chinese name spelling. In the book, they use so-called Wade Giles spelling, which is different than today's spelling, which use pinyin. Okay, it's more popular now. So you may find out it's different, but I don't know what would the best way to the best way is to provide a table so you can compare, but I didn't spend time to do this work. So if you got confused, just raise your hand. So before we are going to start, okay, and before today I divide today's session to 4 parts. First part, I'm going to talk about who is Mozi and the Mohist, okay. Okay, and the second part, I'm going to talk about the second part, talking about Mohist epistemology, like how to know things, and how does knowledge possible? This kind of question. Number 3, we'll talk about Mohist ethic and logic. And number 4, be interested in talking about how this school criticized other Chinese philosophical school. So as usual, I want to put the background on that. Today, our focus, okay, is on the ancient time, okay, which is 2,500 years ago. Okay, so don't get confused with modern day. Okay, nothing with modern day. Okay, so when we talk about Mozi, okay, and the Mohist, just like Confucius and the Confucianism, okay, or Confucians, okay. So usually the person is the founder of the school. So Mozi is the founder of the school. That's correct. And then I will say during the time Mozi is during this period of time, he's probably a little bit younger than Confucius. Okay. But today, our subject talking about Mohist, which is happened probably 200 years later, is during this time, the later time. So that means the founder, Mozi, already passed away, okay, for over 300 years. And his disciple and disciple, the group of people continue to work on his theory, and then all combined as a book. And this book called Mozi, okay. And then we are going to talk about the later part. So the Mozi in May we talk about is around Confucius time, but today we are talking about is the later time, so-called the Warring States. So you can see, just give you some background, okay, for the person who don't know Chinese history. During the Confucius time, we call the spring and the autumn. At that time, China probably have over 200 states, okay, during that time. And during the later Mohist time, okay, so-called the warring state, China, the number of states has significantly reduced, okay, eventually to 7 states on the around 250 BCE, and finally on 221 become only 1 state, which is Qin dynasty. So today's Mohist, okay, the book, the text has been written during this period of time. So I think that's important in the time frame and the situation of China. And a few background, okay, so we will talk about, I think long time ago we talked about, we always have the 6 different schools, okay. We have a 6 school, and then, just one minute. We have a 6 different school. Confucianism, we already talked about Confucius, we talk about Mencius, and in about next month, we will talk about Xunzi, that's another Confucianism. Legalism, we haven't talked about yet, but in a few weeks, we'll talk about Han Fei, okay. Taoism, we already covered Laozi, which is written the Dao De Jing, and the Zhuangzi, that's the Taoism school. School of name, we already talked about the Huishi and the Gong Sun Long, I think 2-3 weeks ago. And the next time we are going to talk about Yin Yang school. And today we are focused on the Mohism. And we talk about in May, it's Mozi, the founder. And today we are going to talk about the later time, his disciple writing. And I also like to put this one together. That's all the philosophers, ancient Chinese philosophers, I put in the timetable. You can see we will consider Confucius as the earliest one, or Laozi as the earliest one, and then Mozi is on the early time. Okay, so the book, Feng Youlan's book, give the title is the Mozi, the first opponent of Confucianism. Okay, so he and this school and the Confucian school are opposite. What they talk about same thing, but they debate each other. Okay, they don't like each other. Let's put it this way. Okay, so today's time is around this time, because the reason we know it's around this time, because in the later Mohist argument, they argue against all people before this. They argue against the Gong Sun Long, against Zhuangzi, against Huishi, okay, and also mentions Confucius. Okay, so that's today's subject. So that's the background. And about the person, the founder. Okay, I copied this one from Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I think I showed this one a few in May. Okay, when we introduced Mozi. Okay, in chapter, I think it's chapter 5. Okay, so just quick review on this one. Mozi, also named Mo Di. Okay, so it's sometimes called Mozi, means Mr. Mo. And his famous philosophy, so-called 10 Theses, okay, and they are the rival to the Confucianism and his follower. Okay, so it's usually we sum up as 10 Theses. I will show it later. And his major philosophy is so-called the all-embracing love, or sometimes we translate it as universal love, okay, or Chinese called Jian Ai. And this one is Mohism's key philosophy, just like Confucian. Okay, the key philosophy is Ren, or we call benevolence. So you will see how Mozi argue on the concept of all-embracing love in today's section. And then between the 4th and the 3rd century BCE, the so-called the later Mohist wrote the early text of Chinese philosophy. Okay, so that's today's subject, because we already discussed this part 2 months ago, and today we are going to discuss the later Mohist. That's today's subject. About Moses' 10 so-called 10 theses. Okay, you can see I just summarized this 10. Most important is impartial love, or we call it all-embracing love, universal love. And then Mohism is different than other philosophical school. They are, I think, Suritasa asked a question about the communist. Okay, so in a way, this school kind of like socialist, okay, in the early time, because they are not only talk about philosophy, they have a group of people and they convince people and then they build technology to prevent war. So important philosophy is they are talking about against the military aggression, okay? Because during this time, there's a lot of war between states. So they are not, the two ways they do to prevent war. One is convince other people. That's why today we have to talk about logic, because they use dialectical and argument to convince people, okay? Not wage military operation. So that's why logic become important. Another part is technology, because they not only talk about this, they really group the people together and go to help the city or state prevent war. So that means they will go to the military operation to defend for some state. So I think that's the way. And another question, common asked question is why they are not happy with Confucianism. They argue against Confucianism. Since both are pretty nice, they try to make the peace for the entire China. But the difference here, you can see these 10 theses. One is frugality in expenditure. Okay, and we can understand we need to save money, but they also important is frugality in funeral, which Confucius disagree, because Confucius think funeral is important. You need to mourn your parent, okay, for 3 years. He talked about ghost, okay, and the Confucius famous talking about it. He doesn't want to teach about the unknown thing, the other world, so which is different, right? And against entertainment, okay, because according to Mohists, entertainment at that time, entertainment usually means music. During that time, doing the music is very expensive. But Confucius think music is important because you can cultivate your virtue. Okay, that's part of ritual. Confucius thinks that's extremely important. So they are different on this part, but also different on the fatalism, because Confucius believes the mandate of heaven. So a lot of things you put your effort, but eventually the heaven will decide what to do, what's the result. And then Mohists disagree on this. So that's why Mohists has a great big heart, try to help everyone, and then they are not only talk the philosophy, they also put in action to help convince people. That's why today's subject is important, because they have to develop the logic technique to convince people and defend their philosophy. Srivastava?
Yeah, Srivastava. Yeah, he's okay too. I had a quick question about the nexus or the roots of the different schools of thought in Chinese philosophy. I mean, it depends, I guess, which the oldest one is. So is there an underarching Buddhist presence of meditation or discipline, or all these different schools of thought organic eruptions from Chinese society?
Okay, I have to assume, and I believe that's true because it's original from China. Okay, because during that time has no contact with the Western world, and the Buddhism doesn't come to China until probably the 1st century. Okay, and then really got popular around 5th or 6th century. So that's a later time, and we will cover for the later chapter about Buddhism. So here is no Buddhism. Okay.
No Buddhism.
If you see something similar, okay, that just happened. Okay, that's assume that. Okay. But
Okay,
when
thank
this you mention this one, some people, which I don't know how strong of that, say Mozi actually is Jews. Okay, because during that time they have rabbi and travel to China, and then that's because you see this kind of activity, and the strange thing is the head of Mohist school, they call Juzi, the giant, which is very strange because in tradition Chinese, usually they call master, teacher, hardly call Juzi. So that's very, so that's why people say they could come from other states. If you answer this question, that could be the case, but there's no evidence. So let's put this one in mind. So and another thing, their last name is Mo. That's also a strange last name. So that's the reason. But forget about history. I know we will have a lot of argue or different opinion of is that true? Is how do you know it's written during that time? It's not later time people fabricate. Yes. So we're done with this question. Usually when I go to the next section, when we discuss the philosophy, we just assume that's true. We're not going to argue whether just like when we read Bible, we're not going to argue. Is that true or not true? That's the Bible. Take it and understand. If you want to argue it's true or not true, we do it later, or before. So right now I'm going to show is the book. So today we call this book Mozi. That's the book. You can see that's a huge book. If you already in my section read Taoism, Tao Te Ching, or read the Confucius Analect, or even read the Other War, you will know how concise, how short of Chinese text. But you can see this one, you cannot imagine. It has 71 chapters. And I try to translate every single one. The first, let's say 30, you see they have anti-Confucianism, self-cultivation, they talk about exaltation of virtue. So look, guys, the first part here is about virtue, and the last part, last 20 chapter, you will see it's about like flag and the pennant, command and order, sounds like a military, right? And talking about preparing against inundation, prepare against Asadi, Hungarian, and Russian. So if you take the look of the book, it's talking about military operation. Then also talk about fortification of the city gate. So it's engineering. So the last part is very technical book. And today we are going to deal with from chapter 40 to 45. This one we don't call, usually we will call it the canon, the Mohist canon. So I put out this one. So these 4 chapters are very different. Basics in today Western standard, we will say that's a book of logic, just like system of logic. And then so basics, chapter 40, we talk about canon A and canon B. And then 42 is the exposition of canon A. And 43 is the exposition of canon B. And the 44 and the 45, so-called major illustration and minor illustration. So it provides some argument against different school. So today's subject basically is focused on this part, and this part is total the people. And the last time we covered on this part about the philosophy, moral philosophy, political religion. That's the last time. And today we deal with pure logic today. So if you don't know the background, you can just jump in to read today's section, and you will feel like you are reading the ancient Chinese logician. Okay, so that's done with the part one. Okay, so before I move to the Mohist philosophy, okay, and then I will stop here for question, comment before we move on. I hope to this time everybody know who is Mozi, okay, and then what we are about to talk about. Joe, please.
Yeah, just really briefly, how does it fundamentally differ then from the Greeks' logic?
It's different, but
Okay, that's great.
there's no syllogism, no syllogism. Okay, it's they have and the epistemology we will see in a few minutes is very modern. I will say modern means 20th century. Okay, utilitarian. Okay, same thought. Okay, as Jeremy Bentham. Okay, but they go to the different direction. Okay, they all have the concept of utilitarian and use utilitarian as the pursuing happiness, avoid pain as the only principle to develop their ethic. So that's very similar. Okay, so I will say it's different than Greek, but very similar to modern or enlightenment times.
So would it be like Epicureanism in a way?
No. Okay, because Epicurean doesn't develop a strong logic on that, and this part is pure logic.
Okay.
So that would be, so I'm glad that you bring this one, and I will put a little bit attention on this. And then since you want to put Epicurean, Aristotle, and other.
I was just thinking about some of the fundamental differences so that I can clarify as to see, how their approaches differed. That's all.
But the situation is this, okay. They have the different way of categorizing things. So it's hard to do apple to apple comparison because I think you can help me during the time because everybody may understand in a different way, and we will see, and then we will see when we go move on. But I think that's an important subject.
So, and then just really quickly, I guess then when you say they categorize things or things differently, I'm assuming that's probably via language.
No. I will say no. The beauty of this one, and personally, I really like this part of reading because basically there's no linguistic barrier. Okay, unlike when we read, especially when we read virtual ethic, right? What is benevolence? Okay, in Confucius and in Aristotle will be very different. Okay, but here we talk about logic. So the language is not the problem. Let's put it this way. Okay.
So yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because then I'd imagine it would be like Aristotle's proofs, like something like that to a certain degree, right?
Yeah, to a certain degree. Okay, but just if you expect the syllogism, and my answer is no. At least I haven't found it. Okay.
Okay.
Srivata and Mark.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on what Joe said. I mean, just my observations being a little bit of a history buff, I'd imagine Greece was a fundamentally expansionist society, and China was a fundamentally defensive society, closed off society. So you would assume, therefore, that the principles that anchor the two societies would also resemble that. Wouldn't you think, therefore, Jason, that the building blocks, China also was more to embolden and to strengthen the Chinese community, as opposed to Greek society, which was also very warlike and individualistic. So it was to embolden the individual.
Okay, so thank you for this one. I think we talk about on chapter 2, okay, because the fundamental different, right? One is land state, one is the marine state. So one is expanding, one is defending. That's a we will say foundational common sense. That's to this one, and then it's related to today's subject. But what you said before, it was kind of more interesting when we talk about virtual ethic or political. But in today's, we talk about logic. The difference, I will put this way, Greek is more geometry, okay? It's more geometry because it's math-based by Pythagorean, okay? Okay, let's put this way, the influence of mathematics or Egypt, okay, geometry. China is different, more on for this school, it's hard to say, okay, but we will see. Okay, sorry, okay, but Mark, please.
Yeah, I want to agree with Jason's comparison of Mohism and utilitarianism. I think that's probably the best comparison in Europe. And it's really interesting to note that it occurred in China almost 2,000 years before in Europe, a similar ideology. And the previous speaker brought up Epicureanism. So there's another philosophy in China, which this group has talked about before, Yangism, which is more similar to Epicureanism.
Yeah.
And those, although there was no contact between the two, they did exist at roughly the same time. Epicureanism and Yangism, like around 300 BC, something like that. So that's a better comparison. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for this. When Mark talk about Yangism, he's talking about Yangzhu. Okay, that's the I think it's chapter 6 or chapter something, the individualism. Okay, Joe, please.
So just for clarification purposes, then but the fundamental objective of both philosophies is idea of pleasure, not pain.
Well, for this philosophy,
the why behind everything, like that's basically what I'm getting at. Like I mean, I understand the particulars may differ on how they may have viewed their metaphysics or whatever it may be. I'm just curious as to know, is the axiom that they're actually going by is that they're seeking pleasure?
Well, I think it's all let's put it this way, all utilitarian, okay, they will consider less pain as also the purpose, right? You're not only seeking pleasure, maximize your pleasure, also reduce your pain. I think that
correct. Yeah. So there's like the Cyrenaics, and there are people like the Epicureans, and then they differ on how they're going to achieve pleasure, right? And that's one aspect of it. And well, whether or not you're going to indulge, that's a different type, right?
That's a different type. Yes.
Yes. So which one are we then? Which one are we talking about then? What would be closer to the appropriate description?
Okay, neither one. Okay, because today we talk about logic. Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah. I mean,
okay. We are going to talk about logic. So I think on the chapter on the section 3, we will be proper to discuss this subject because let's see how Mohists argue about pain and the pleasure. Mark, please.
Yeah, I think I actually misunderstood the previous speaker's point a little bit. I think he's actually right in that respect, that Epicureanism, Mohism, utilitarianism, and there's one other school I wanted to mention, but that those three all share like a kind of focus on pleasure. But the really strong difference between and Yangism as well. But the really strong difference between Yangism and Mohism, and the same between utilitarianism and Epicureanism, is that Yangism and Epicureanism are really focused on the individual and what the individual can do in their own life to maximize their sentiment. Whereas utilitarianism and Mohism are more focused on the society overall. They're focused on like the idea of the maximum good for the maximum number. Yangism and Epicureanism aren't really concerned with the maximum good for the maximum number. So they're much more inward focusing that way. But all four of those ideologies do have kind of some sense of pleasure or well-being as a core idea, as opposed to like service to God or truth or some kind of more abstract idea like that, like you might find in Platonism or Christianity or something like that. So in that respect, I think the previous speaker is correct. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mark. I think that's thank you for clear up this part. Okay, so yes, utilitarian. I'm talking about Benson. Okay, and Mohism. Yes, they are thinking about the overall maximum number of people. Okay, and then you will see Mohism even more aggressive than English utilitarian, because he is thinking about all embracing. That means everybody. Okay, so okay, let's move on, and that will be on this section 3. And then right now, let's talk about epistemology first. Okay, so back to just put the utilitarian on side, and we will discuss later in about, let's say, 30 minutes. Okay, so we will talk about utilitarian. Let's talk about the epistemology. So first, I think in this chart, I think today, I will say it's a consensus. We will know how do we know things. We have a sensation, we have a perception, then we have understanding, right? So I just use Hegel's phenomenology of spirit. The first 3 chapters, he talked about sensation, perception, and understanding, then go to the consciousness, self-consciousness, reason, blah, blah, blah. That's how Hegel goes in this one. Sensation, perception, understanding. We may see different names. For example, Kant would say perception, intuition, and understanding. So basics, we all, in the 20th century, we all talk about, we have our sense tool, and then we see something in our image, in our brain, then we digest, we know something. Okay, so that's the process. And then Mohism, I would say that they are very modern, because in the early time, they already talk about this. Okay, they talk about knowledge. This Chinese word doesn't show up because that's a strange word. Okay, a known, okay, first talking about I, okay, a known faculty, which is that by means of which one knows, but which itself does not necessarily know, okay, just like I. Okay, his example is I, but we can believe he also means ear, nose, or smell, taste, touch, all the senses. Second, the second step, knowledge is that in which knowing, right, meets the object and is able to apprehend its form and the shape. So that's appearance, right? In a lot of philosophy will call it appearance. I think Kant will call intuition. Okay. Third step, what exists in mind is that by means of which one understands the object of knowledge. He called it enlightenment. That means understanding. That's your mental power to understand, digest. So that's the process of knowing in Mohism. Okay, he put in chapter 42. Okay, then the way he start to do it is try to classify it. Okay, since we know, how do we know? Okay, then he start to classify it. So 2 ways to classify. Okay, total is 7 categories. So first one, he categorized by the source, right? The knower. Okay, how do you know this thing? And second thing is talking about the knowledge itself, the object of knowledge. So according to the text, the book is talking about there's 4 kinds of objects of knowledge and 3 different ways of knowing. So here he talks about first, all right. I put the Chinese here. So the difficulty is that the Chinese is very short. So And the Mohist text in this part, Mohist Canon text is very short. So it's you have to figure out, okay, what that means. Okay. So first talk about that derived through the personal experience, okay, so of the knower. So, and the second is transmitted by authority, right? That is obtained from somebody. Like, for example, you have a forest fire, right? If you drive by the freeway, you see the fire. That's the first one, you personal experience. Or you can read from the internet, okay, from the newspaper, you know, some place have a forest fire. So that's the second type called 闻, okay, transmitted by authority. Third one called knowing by inference, right? So you don't know directly, but you remove the barrier, then you know. So that includes deduction and induction, right? So for example, you see far away, they have smoke coming out and then a lot of smoke. So you can reasonably assume they have a forest fire. So according to Mohist, there's three sources of knowing things, right? By experience, by authority, and by inference. Then he talked about knowledge itself. Okay, so he separate as four different kinds of knowledge. We talk about the object of knowledge, right? First is the knowledge of name, okay, knowledge of actuality, and the knowledge of correspondence. Okay, so for example, and in a way, I think better way is talking about Chinese called 名实偶. I think better way to understand is the proposition knowledge. Okay, for example, this is a table. Okay, this kind of thing, the knowledge. Okay, the fourth one called knowledge of action, right? So know-how procedure, for example, you know how to bike, how to ski, how to swim. Okay, this kind of knowledge. So I like to use this example because I just recently run into this book called The Meaning of Meaning, okay, by Ogden and Richards. Okay, talking about the semiotic triangle. So put about the symbol, reference, and the thought, okay, together. So for example, we have the knowledge, okay, of table, which is the knowledge of name, right? And then we can also have the knowledge of actuality. You see, okay, that's the table itself. If you put together, that's the knowledge of proposition. This is a table. So this kind of concept, they already have it and then put it together. And other than these three, they add another one called the knowledge of action. Okay, so that's the knowledge here. And I show this one is, I think Joe asked this question, or somebody asked this question about the difference and how, if we compare to Greek, right? During the Greek time or in the up to date, right? The Western tradition, we will say a proposition is a subject plus predicate, right? This is a table, or example, Socrates is a philosopher. Confucius is a teacher, right? Confucius, Socrates, that's the subject. And the teacher, philosopher, table, the predicate. That's in the Western way or Greek way of look at the proposition. Chinese way during that time, I think if you've been here more than 3 sections, you probably will know. I always show this one, actuality and the name. Okay, so basics, it's very similar to the Western or Greek concept. We say this or Confucius or Socrates, that's an actuality, that's a real thing, a particular. And then we assign a general name, okay, which is a table, philosopher, or teacher, which is universal to them. Okay, so that's the concept here. So according to Mohist, right, your knowledge including the name itself, the actuality, okay, and they combine together. So the three kinds of knowledge and plus the action, four kinds of knowledge. So that's the way Mohism is trying to build up on the fundamental of their epistemology. Joe, please.
No, I think I just figured it out. I was just going to ask about what their rules were with analytic and synthetic.
Analytic and synthetic.
Truths.
I know. I'm thinking about, you mean you
Yeah,
talk
their approach towards that.
a priori or a posteriori, right? Yes, they talk about this.
Well, the subject and the object.
You talk about the subject and the subject and the object, or subject and the predicate, right? Let me see. I think here he talk about this. Okay. It's very different if you want to compare with Plato, right? Plato basics would deny all the empirical knowledge. Let's put it this way, right? What you see, just use the allegory of cave as an example. Whatever you see is just shadow. Okay, so that's not the truth. The real truth is the form. Only use intelligent or philosophical approach to know it. But in Mohism, or all Chinese philosophy, nobody reject the empirical. So how do you know things? Let's put it this way. Let's use this one as an example, right? So first one, this one derived through the personal experience. That's empirical, or you want to call it synthetical, or you want to call it a posteriori, right? And then the last one, the knowledge by inference. Okay, so it's not really analytical, okay, but it's use some logic, induction or deduction to know things. And then you talk about analytical, that would be the next subject, which...
So maybe that's a better question, is that maybe, is there basically Hume's problem with induction in this? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, they talk about induction and the deduction. Okay, later we'll talk about this. And
Yeah,
then you talk about analytical.
Like there, where, you know, essentially Kant would say that you could actually make synthetic statements and infer what you can infer about the world, whereas Hume would say you can't infer certain things.
Yeah, okay, but
that's... you make that distinction, like, is that distinction being made here? The problem of induction.
You mean they make, but not as clear as Hume and Kant. Let's put it this way. All right. But okay. I like to back to what you asked about the analytical, okay, analytical knowledge, right? Which we consider as the classification of name. So this one is totally analytical, okay. Or you want to call it a priori, right? Because you don't have to go to the real world to understand. For example, you talk about table, you don't have to check the table. You just based on the knowledge of table. Okay, let's put it this way. Okay, so again, the way Mohists do it is put in the three different categories of name. Okay, so you put it, I think first one called the species, general, and the proper name. So about the analytical knowledge, or you want to call it the name, all right, which includes three categories. Okay, one is species, okay, and then second will be general, okay. For example, dog, okay, it's a species, and mammal, okay, that's a category called the general. It's called Chinese called they, okay. And another category is the proper name, like Los Angeles, New York, America, okay, Joe, okay, Jason, okay, that's the proper name, proper noun, Okay, so that's the way they categorize the names. Okay, so back to Joe's question, that will become complex because if you want to use Kant or Hume to understand this one, we'll find out it's difficult. So let's use this one, use fresh mind to see how modes or Mohist define the purpose of dialectic. Okay, so here chapter 45. Okay, the text shows this certain purpose of doing dialectics. Okay, so the better comparison would be compared to Aristotle's rhetoric. When Aristotle writes rhetoric, he's talking about the purpose of philosophy is to find the truth, but the purpose of rhetoric is to convince it, right? That's Aristotle's the rhetoric purpose. And I would say this word, the translation, we call it the 辩, okay, in Chinese word, and then dialectic, okay, should be the translation, okay, but he put dialectic, I think that's misspelled. Okay, dialectic serve the following purpose, right? To distinguishing between right and the wrong, to discriminate between order and the disorder, to make evidence point of the similarity and the difference, to examine the principle of name and the actuality. What is name, what is actuality, and then to differentiate what is beneficial and what is harmful, to remove the doubt and uncertainty, to illustrate, simulate the causes of all things. Okay, so here has a logic part. He tried to find the cause, right? And to compare different argument, to use name to designate the actuality, right? Injuries. That's the proposition knowledge, right? And then to use language to express ideas, kind of rhetoric, and use the inference to find the reason, right? Find the inference. So here's the last two things I find out is interesting. The way talk about is the category to induce and deduce. I'm not sure the translation is proper, but I can explain in this way. This one is talking about you have some category, right? No. For example, you examine 200 different apples, and you can categorize for 5 different categories, 5 kind of apple. That's the method he's talking about. The other method is the other way around. I have 5 different categories of apple, and I see 200 apple, and I use these 5 categories assigned to these 200 apples. Okay, so that's the 2 different way to talking about. So here, Mohist text is talking about the purpose of dialectic is doing all this one. And you can see probably if you will see probably like how to say, which part is convention, which part is moral, which part is, it's a different category, but you can see the purpose to find out the right and the wrong, order, disorder, try to cover everything in our language. And then it go to more detail, right? It's to 7 method of dialectic. Okay, so here they list the 7 different kind of method. So first, we talk about particular judgment, which is like, for example, you say, okay, we can use the Chinese philosophy argument. All men are born good. okay, human nature is good, then you can say, oh no, I know a kid or baby who is evil, to refute it, right? Second way is a hypothetical judgment, okay? You can say like, it's kind of indirect proof, okay? So for example, you can say, if the earth is flat, well, which is wrong, right? If earth is flat, then earth is also limited. Somebody must fall out from the edge of the earth, right? That's another way to argue. Xiao, okay, which calls modeling, right? You can say, for example, let's talk about voting age. That's lower the voting age to 16 years old or 15 years old. So kind of a short experience. You think about the situation and see what's the consequence of that. And talking about analog, right? You can compare, right? You can compare, use analog. For example, okay, so for example, it's in economics, right? You can, for example, supply and the demand, right? So to decide the price. You can use a simple example, like there's one apple tree, okay, and they have 100 people in this town, and then how to decide the price, make it simple to analog, okay, the price model, something like this. And then you can also do the parallel, which is, for example, compare the situation of human nature is good or human nature is bad, right? And number 6 of something like supporting, if you can use this logic and I also can use this logic, right? So for example, people are arguing something, one will say, oh, no, because everybody have only limited knowledge. You only have limited knowledge, so you don't know what's going on. Then I also can say, oh, since you say everybody has only limited knowledge, you also have the limited knowledge. So okay, use the same way to argue back. And another one called the extension. So that means you already have the model. You use another model, for example, the price, the apple and the 100 people, supply and the demand. You can put another thing called peach tree, right? And then you can extend this model, become more complex. So that's the way Mohist list about the 7 different methods of dialectics. And then it will be very difficult to go this 7 case by case. And I think it's not only difficult for me, and then for the audience also difficult to pay attention on the all the detail about different methods of dialectics. So I just want, the purpose is to show Mohist already lists the different kind of dialectics. Okay, so kind of summarize on this part. Okay, so when we talk about epistemology in general, we talk about the knower and the known, right? The object, and then the process. Okay, the knowing process. So the knower part, right? You talk about perception, appearance, and understanding. The known, the knowledge, the object knowledge, right, is already categorized 4 kinds of knowledge, right? The name, the actuality, the proposition knowledge, and the action knowledge. And the process of knowing, right? So we talk about from the authority, hearsay, okay, or from the personal experience, right? Another one is from dialectic, right? We already did 7 different kinds of dialectic method to know the process of knowing. So I would say it's similar, but also different than the Western way of doing epistemology. But basics cover the same domain of how do we know. And then if you were here more than 2 times, you probably will know this text is very different than other texts because it focuses on the technique, okay, logic, okay, on this part. So I will stop for minutes about this one before I move to the utilitarian part. So Mohists, please understand, they talk about this. It's not just for pure logic, because they have a purpose, because they want to develop their ethic, okay, and political theory, and they want to argue against other school, and that's their purpose. So, any common question on this part? Joe, please.
Yeah, so just basically, so I'm getting, just following here is that, yeah, how we perceive objects in the world, which is essentially, within space-time and everything like that. And then you have the idea of the epistemological approach, what is actually worth and can be known, right? And then after that, you have the classifications, which comes through names, which comes through the predicate logics, right, that we're going through.
Yeah.
That's where I was getting into the analytic and synthetic.
Yeah.
And then from there, so as I was mentioning in the chat, it's like it wasn't between what was being observed, it was more about the predicate logic that I was kind of referring to. But we know where anyway, but the like all swans are white, there's nothing about white that is actually contained in swan, but if you say all unmarried men are bachelors, the idea of bachelor and unmarried man is the same, they're contained within the same. So there's like the analytic versus the synthetic, what is assumed. But anyway, that was kind of where I was going with the language. But the other last part was, again, just a series of proofs, which can be seen as almost like similar to Aristotle's, if it's, how you form your judgments. Basically, if it's not this, it's the opposite, right? Or, if it's not good, it's bad. Something along, it's just a series of proofs, which is the dialectic in this case.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, but I do find out the two things is not very clear in Mohists epistemology, right? One is syllogism is not there. Okay, so there's no step by step. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing, just like your example, bachelor is unmarried man. Okay, so this kind of a priori or analytical knowledge is not their interest. Okay, they probably directly reject as a tautology. Okay, so they never talk about this, and so that's why your question is very difficult to answer, because
and if they don't if they don't make the distinction, that's fine.
No, they don't make this distinction.
Trying to figure that out is that how does their predicate logic actually work?
That's right.
So that's and if that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to see how anyway how their concepts are captured, or they feel like, because that would directly relate to what can be known, right? So
okay, so one thing is
what you infer, right? It has to be under the rules of inference to a certain degree, right? Because then it's there's logic based on that. It's inductive logic or deductive logic.
Yeah. So I just want to say is they have the knowledge about name, but they don't have the concept of Kantian concept of a priori. Okay. So something you don't see, but it's always true. At least my understanding, they are not interested in this one, because they are very practical. Okay, you will see in the utilitarian part, and you will see why they are not interested, because there's not going to any benefit to know all bachelor are unmarried men, right? So they are not interested in this part. We have Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. You might have covered this already, so I apologize if I missed it. But this Mohist epistemology and dialectic, is this from Moza itself, or is this in the text of later Mohists?
Okay, I already covered, you miss it. So,
Oh,
okay,
all
Mozi
right.
on the early time, okay, around the Confucius time, I would say probably 50 years younger than Confucius. Okay, let's assume that. And then he led a group of people to promote his idea. But this one, for sure, I think I will, later I'm going to show you why I truly believe it's later time, at least 200, 300 later than Moism, because there's no way, okay, during that time, they have this kind of clear thinking. Let's put it this way, okay. So we'll see this, answer this question better later, okay. So any other comment or question? Srivata?
Yeah, I had a quick comment here
Okay,
because
please.
I looked up the roots of both dialectic and epistemology, and they're both Greek.
Yeah.
So I don't quite like this assumption that the Greek philosophical school of thought is naturally superior to everything else. And we just go by the Greek system of judgment that, okay, Greece is up here and everything else is below it. And we're just going to use the Greek system of judgment on every other school of thought. How is it fair to the Chinese school of thought or to the Indic school of thought or to other schools of thought?
Yeah, I think that's very true. But unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, we use English, right? And then when we use English, we have to use some language which from Greek concept. So
Yeah,
uh,
no, but I'm just
so
saying, yeah.
yeah,
I'm
so
just
same thing. Because I also read the Chinese, right? So when I read the Chinese to explain the Western philosophy, it's also very difficult. Even I'm better in Chinese than English. Sometimes I find out very difficult. Just like your point of view, there's no way Chinese concept is superior to Western concept. So how can we fit together? So I think that's the same situation. But we unless we find other neutral language. And oh yeah, there's a way to do it. Okay, you just go to the symbolic logic. So we just do exist A for any B belong to E, therefore something. Then you don't see any text. Then they will be very neutral. But I don't think.
yes, but I mean, there's obviously a tier system. I mean, you have a lot of philosophy can also be, I mean, in a sense, it's also mental jugglery. It's
Yeah.
different schools of thought. It's juggling with different opinionative stances. And then so the tier system, sometimes you have the intellect, which can be higher than the mind, and then you have the intuition, where the spiritual schools of thought comes in. I'm quite poor with philosophy. However, the spiritual schools of thought and the Taoist and the Yin Yang are quite profound, quite profound. So I just thought I'd just say it in defense. I'm sure the Chinese schools
Okay.
of thought don't need any defense, but I'm just
Next
saying,
time
like,
next time we will talk about Yin Yang school. Okay, so
hmm,
you were here, and then okay. So one thing I'd like to make it clear is from time to time we compare with different philosophy especially in the Western philosophy. The reason is not to say they are the same, they are different. More thing is they have the same flavor to help you to understand, just like Joe asked the question, compared to Aristotle, compared to whoever, right? Kant or Hume. And please don't take us comparison for which one better, which one is more advanced. Basics we try to do is help you understand in this way, just like one of his methods called okay, parallel, okay? So that's one of the parallel, okay? Let's compare the argument with the other one. Okay, we are not going to say this one is better, this one is advanced, but what we say, use this one, you can understand why they talk about this. That's the purpose we have always bring up different philosopher. So that's the time for me to move on the third part. Utilitarianism. Okay, so Joe, please.
Just a really quick question. Well, I mean, maybe we'll come back to it at the end. I just maybe think about describing the distinction between the proofs at that we covered on the last slide in the previous section to how that relates to what you were saying earlier about the geometric and the algebraic distinctions. Like I wasn't seeing that, like how the Greek influence of geometry would have influenced and how algebra would influence these proofs. I'm not making that connection. I was just wondering if
You talk about in the Western or Greek, right? Greek, the geometry.
well, yeah. But I'm trying to see how the
But
proofs
here you
impacted by
probably don't see the.
mathematics.
That's my personal opinion, right? So when you see this one, it's not as clear, true and false. This kind of concept in Chinese logic, even we call this one logic, right? It's more, it seems more interest here. Seems more interest of right and wrong, order, disorder, similar, difference, okay? And the name, actuality, beneficial, harmful. You don't see truth or false, right? So look like they are very empirical, okay? They are not mathematical, they are not geometrical, okay? They are more empirical. Everything they develop, the logic is empirical. That's why there's nothing like a priori analytical knowledge. All bachelor are unmarried men, okay? No, this kind of knowledge, because everything is very empirical. Because you see this, they are not interested in true or false. They're interested in the right or wrong. Okay, let's move on to, I think that's a good subject to continue because next one we talk about utilitarianism. So of course we can just brief introduction about the Jeremy Bentham, okay, and then 18th century English philosopher, and considered as the founder of the modern utilitarianism. Okay, after him was John Stuart Mill. Okay, the greatest, basically the maxim is the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people, okay, or happiness, right? And then Pen and the Pleasure. Okay, so this one is opening chapter 1. Okay, nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. It is for them alone. Okay, I think the key word is alone, right? Okay, that's the only principle to point out what we ought to do as well as determine what we should do. So what we ought to do is what we should do. Okay, and that's pain and the pleasure. That's the only principle they are talking about. So that's the Bentham's philosophy. So I copy from he Penn and that's the very okay. So the interesting, if you go to his book, right, you will see how Bentham developed his philosophy. Basically, he called it felicity calculate, okay, or called the specific calculation. Okay, so he has a way to calculate the happiness. Okay, or so talk about duration, intensity, and certainty. Okay, so all this one put a consideration, right? You want to maximize your happiness or minimize your pain, and you extend to more people. So eventually, Jeremy Bentham tried to do is become a law. He write a bunch of laws, okay, to govern this society. That's the way Western or English utilitarianism developed. Then we have the John Stuart Mill, right? Go to the on liberty and go to the, or he also had the system of logic. Okay, so that's the development side. And here you will see the early Chinese utilitarian. They start similar, but they go to a different direction. So on chapter 44, I think it's back to original people asked the question, right? The pain and the pleasure. He used I think it's a good example, but a little bit strange. But I just try to be honest, be honest about the original text. Okay. So when one cut a finger in order to preserve a hand, okay, why you have to do that? Probably being bitten by the poisonous snake, right? So you want to lose a finger instead of your hand. So this is to choose the greater benefit and the lesser harm. Okay, to choose the lesser harm is not to choose harm, but to choose benefit. Okay, so then he give the example. Oh, it's not snake. He talk about the if I'm meeting a robber, one lose a finger so as to save one's life. Okay, this is benefit. The meeting with the robber is harm. So you already have harm. I don't know why he used this example, but that's the text. Choice of a greater benefit is not a thing done under compulsion. Choice of lesser harm is a thing done under compulsion, right? So he is talking about you pursue greater happiness is voluntarily, okay? It's not under compulsion, but you choose the lesser pain, okay? For example, lose one finger instead of one hand or your life. It's under compulsion. So that's the way they start their philosophy of pleasure and pain. Okay, so you pursue pleasure voluntarily. Okay, and you avoid pain under compulsion. Okay, so then he start to redefine the human psychology. He talk about desire means directly weighting the benefit, right? Which is not under compulsion. And dislike directly weighting the harm, which is under compulsion. So similar to what Benson talking about, but slightly different. Okay, back to the question about Western is always more mathematical. That's why Benson start to do the calculation, intention, intensity, duration, certainty, this kind of thing. But ancient Chinese not going this direction, so more practical, okay, empirical. So he talking about that based on this, right? He defined what's the benefit, what's harm, right? Benefits is what one is pleased to get. Harm is what one disliked getting. So here, from here, he can define all the moral teaching, okay? You will see all this moral teaching. It's Confucius moral teaching. Ren, which is the benevolence. Yi, we call dutiful or your righteousness. Loyalty. Xiao, okay, filial piety, how to treat your parent. Achievement, right? So he just used, that's the same virtue Confucius talking about, or the traditional Chinese talking about. But he just give a different reason to do this. Use the utilitarian reason. For example, he talk about Ren, benefit is love individually. Okay, you love everyone. Okay, he called Ren. Okay, Yi. Okay, in Confucius definition is more dutiful. Okay, it's your duty to do something right. But he said righteousness is what is beneficial. Okay, so the intent is take the whole world, okay, and then to benefit the whole world. Okay, so that's leads to the concept of righteousness or dutiful, right? Loyal, okay, it means benefit your ruler, that's loyal, okay? Xiao, filial piety, is to benefit your parent. Okay, so he doesn't like Confucius talking about you have to do this way to mourn for 3 years. You need to make sure your facial expression is right. Okay, you have to retain a certain attitude to your parent. He doesn't talk about this. He talk about xiao. One of the most important virtue is just benefit your parent. Think about it. Is that benefit to your parent or not? Increase the happiness of your parent or not? If yes, then that means you are doing filial piety. Gong, okay, which is achievement. It's very simple. It's think about benefit to the people. That's the virtue is talking about. So that's they use the utilitarian logic to give the foundation for all the virtue. And then they use this one to support their most important teaching, which is all-embracing love, right? So when we talk about all-embracing love, which is different than Western utilitarian, Benson only talk about maximize, okay? Maximize the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. But here, Mohism use all embracing. That means everybody. So here, face two challenges, right? One is all. Does that mean infinity? Okay. So that face the same situation Aristotle face, right? Does infinity exist or not? Second question is, if you say all, okay, at that time, a robber or criminal should be killed, okay? So if you kill a criminal, so that means you don't love all people. So that's the two challenges, okay, from this philosophy, right? So here, Mohist is going to use their logic to argue against it, right? So first, let's talk about all embracing. He used the example. He talked about loving men. Okay, one need to love all men. Okay, then you can say loving people. If not loving men, okay, one does not need to not to love all men, right? You only to not love one man. Okay, you are not love all men. Okay, so he used example. When riding horse, right? One need only ride. You don't need to ride all horses. You only need to ride one horse. You can say, I'm riding a horse, right? But if you are not, what you say you are not riding horse, that means you have to not ride it all horse. As long as you ride on one horse, you cannot claim you are not riding horse. Okay, so he used this concept to define what the meaning of loving all people. That's just like not riding a horse. You never ride any single horse. So that's the way they define the meaning of all embracing. Okay, Chinese called Jian. Okay, the all embracing. So here leads to the question of infinity, right? If you talk about loving all people, then the challenge will be this. Because during that time, people are in the northern part, so the south part is all jungle. So people believe we don't know the boundary of south, because if you look at the map, right, you're going south from the center China all the way south, you go to Vietnam, you have to go very far to the sea. So people don't know, there's a boundary or not. So the argument is in the south, if the south is limited, right? So it can be totally included, right? So, but if the south is unlimited, then how do you know? Okay, you love all people because the space could be unlimited. So you don't know it's limited or unlimited. So you don't know you can love all people or not. So Mohists' rebuttal would be, the point is not infinity, or is not about limited or unlimited. So they say that the infinity is not necessarily incompatible with all embracingness. The reason is based on fill up or not fill up. right? Fool or not. So the point is, I think the argue is if people do not fill up, let's say, okay, if people do not fill up the source, if source is unlimited and the people do not fill up, then that means the number of people are limited. So you can love all of them, okay? So if the people do fill up the unlimited source, that also means the number of people are limited, even the source is unlimited. So in this case, you can love all limited people. So that's the logic they are using to argue, right? You can love all people, even the source is unlimited. Because if it's unlimited, either you fill up or not fill up. If it's fill up, then that means I can love all these people. If you cannot fill up, that means the unlimited is not really unlimited. So you can love this amount of people. So that's the way they argue. And in today's logic, it may not be able to stand, but if you compare to Plato's argument in Socrates' argument, you will know, it's kind of similar. They use different way, try to defend their own philosophy. Second question is, to kill a robber is to kill a man, right? So let's assume as a robber should be killed. Okay. So his argument is a white horse is a horse. To ride a white horse is to ride a horse. A black horse is a horse. To ride a black horse is to ride a horse. So that sounds right, right? Or somebody, let's use Jiang. Jiang is a name, a man, right? To love Jiang is to love a man. That's right, okay? And Tom, okay, Tom is a man. To love Tom is also love a man. So that's no problem on that. Second case, he will say, that's reverse, right? That's Huo is a person, okay? Let's say Jiang. Jiang's parents are men, right? And then when Jiang served his parents, you cannot say he's serving the man. You have to say he served his parents, right? Jiang's younger brother is a handsome man, right? And he loved his younger brother, but you don't say he's loving man. Okay, you will say he's loving his younger brother, right? And again, when a cart is wood, made by wood, right? You ride a cart, you don't say I ride a wood. A boat is a wood. When you ride a boat, you don't say I ride a wood, right? So in this case, a robber is a man, right? But there are many robbers. Doesn't mean, like, when we say there are many robbers, since we say robber is a man, but there are many robbers. We don't say there are many men, right? We say there are many robbers. So when we say there are no robbers, doesn't mean there are no men, okay? So in this way, robber and the man are different. So his explanation is to hate the existence of many robbers is not to hate the existence of many men. To wish there were no robber is not to wish there were no men. So in this case, right, in this case, although a robber man is a man, but to love a robber is not to love man, okay? And not to love robber is not to love man. So in the same way, he can call to kill a robber man is not really kill a man. So that's his argument about the a robber and the man, his argument. So I think that when I read this one, it's very similar to when you read Zeno's argument, the paradox, right? If you put in today's logic or syllogism, it's not sustainable. But they have their own way of arguing, right? Two key questions about their all-embracing love, right? One is to defend the meaning of all-embracing, which doesn't matter is limited or unlimited. Second, to defend the kill a robber is not to kill a man. So even you kill a robber, you still love all men. That's his argument. So I will stop here on this part before I move to the very last part. So I stop for question or comment on this part. No comment? Okay, Joe, please.
Yeah, no, just really, I'm starting to see the logical proofs actually play out and how it works with our ethics, essentially. That's that you're seeing.
I think the best comparison is not compared to Aristotle, probably compared to Plato's the dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I would get, yeah, I mean, there's clearly some, I mean, they both talk about infinity. So I mean, there's still some relationships there. I mean, I think that they all have their, I mean, this is kind of closer to, it is closer probably, I don't know. I mean, actually, I would say it is, I would think it is maybe even closer to Aristotle in some ways, in my opinion, but I haven't thought it through. But in any case, I'm just seeing you're just applying the proofs now to love.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, I think the only thing they try to prove is, number one, it's possible to love all people. Okay, you want to make sure it's possible to do this way, right? Because people say there's a limited number of people. How in this part, we start to appreciate their clear thought, because when you talk about all embracing love, Chinese words called jian, okay, that means no bias.
Maybe it is.
The first question you will ask is that possible? Because there's so many people, right? But he want to say it's possible. Okay, he just say it's possible. He doesn't say so everybody you can love. You can know. Everybody know you cannot know every single person, but you can possibly love every single person.
So is this like Plato's circle? The idea of a circle for Plato, the idea that everything is included in this circle. It's the perfect, it's like almost an ideal.
I don't think they have this concept of
well, not a circle, but an ideal almost. It sounds like the love.
Yeah. It's an ideal situation. You can love everybody, because the challenge is there's an unlimited number, right? And they were back to Mohists try to avoid Aristotle's argument. If Aristotle is here, he will try to say or prove there's no such thing as infinity. Okay, so I think Aristotle said there's no infinity, doesn't exist. That's the Aristotle's way of argument. And the Mohist way of argument is say, okay, it's not important, infinity or finite. As long as you fill up or not fill up, either way, I can love everybody. Okay, that's his logic. And second argument will be, okay, how about you kill one person? He's a bad guy. Can you still claim you love everybody? And his argument, yes, you can do it. But his way is not logical. His way is, I will call linguistic. Okay, because when we say I serve my parents are men, are people. I serve my parents. I don't say I serve men. I serve people. I say so. It's not equal. So in this way, he said, kill a robber is not kill a man. That's in his way. Okay, so let's move to the last part. And then I think we probably can have 10 minutes to discussion. Okay, this part is not that long. And then he argued against almost all, I would say all philosophers we talked about before. Okay, Hui Shi, remember he talked about it's a school of name. Okay, his philosophy is talking about love all things equally. Heaven and earth are one body, because he focused on he's kind of like Pythagoras. okay, in China, right? Everything is relative, okay? I'm tall man among a bunch of kids, but I'm a short man, you know, in front of a basketball player, right? So am I short or tall? Okay, so everything is relative. So according to Huishi, he talk about we are all the same, okay? Chinese words called 同, okay? So in this case, we should love everybody, okay? We all the same. That's the logic. And the Mohist argument is linguistic argument. He talk about Chinese 同, okay, or sameness have 4 different meaning, okay? So two names for one actuality they call identity. Okay, so for example, cat and the kitty, they both talk about the same thing. Okay, that's just the two names. Inclusion in one is part and the whole. I think the translation 体同, Feng Youlan translates the part and the whole. I think another way is talking about they are in the same material. So for example, the deck and the table are the same because they have the same material. Both in the same position or the coexistence, okay, in so-called coexistence in Chinese also called same, like classmate, okay, co-worker, okay. So having some point of similarity is generic relation. 类同, that means they belong to the same genre. Okay, so dog and the cat are all belong to animal or mammal. So in this case, right, they are the same, but it's not really the same. That's Mohists argue against Huishi, okay, the philosopher in School of Name. Another person in the School of Name, okay, Gong Sun Long, and we talk about his argument is the separation of hardness and whiteness, right? He talked about hard white rock. Actually, it's two things, okay, because the whiteness you cannot touch to know it's white. You have to see it. And then the hardness, you cannot by seeing, you know, it's hard. You have to touch it. Since seeing and touching are separate sensor. So this rock actually is two, okay? One is hard rock, one is a white rock. That's Gong Sun Long's argument. And the Mohist's argument is hardness, whiteness are not, they are separate, but they are not exclusive. So they could be the same. Okay, he didn't say, they say they are compatible, so they must be exist together. Just briefly, he also argued against the 道德经. Okay, because 道德经, chapter 19 or 20, argue about the learning is useless. So Mohist argue is, well, since you are teaching and they tell people learning is useless, then you want people to learn from you or not learn from you, right? That's the argument. So the information, learning is useless. That means your teacher is useless. So you are teaching useless, then I don't have to listen to you. So that's his argument on 道德经. And he also argued on 庄子, okay? Because 庄子basics on his second chapter, okay? Equality of things, okay? So he talked about the great argument does not require words and the speech that argue fall short. And so all speech is perverse, okay? So his argument is, since it's perverse, then does that include this language? You said just like everything I said is lie. Okay, so do you have to believe me or not believe me, right? If you believe me, that means not everything I said is a lie. Or if you don't believe me, then I'm not, everything I say is not a lie. So either way, I'm not right, I'm wrong. So that's kind of argument he provide this one. So the smarting of or spatial thing Mohists argue against other philosopher or other school is they don't point out the name. They don't point out the name. They just use logic to argue. So say you do this way, then I do it. Just like if you go back to his 7 way of dialectics, they use like this kind of way to argue. Okay, so finally, this one is not on this chapter. I present previous in May, right, on the first part, criticizing Confucianism. So I just repeat here since he tried to go over every single school. So we talk about the principle of Confucianism ruin the whole world in 4 ways. Okay, that's very sharp criticizing, right? So he talked about first, Confucianists do not believe in existence of heaven and the ghost. Okay, and the Confucianism insist on elaborate funeral and practice 3 years of mourning the death of one of the parents, which is wasteful. Right, the first one will the heaven and the ghosts will get angry at you or punish you. Second one is waste. Third one, Confucianists stress on practicing music, which is wasteful and useless. Right, according to them, music is useless. Confucianism believe a predetermined fate because they believe mandate of heaven. So they are lazy. So that's Mohisms argue against Confucius. So another chapter talking about those who have a long life cannot exhaust the required study, because Confucius asks people to study, okay, all the ancient texts. So Mohism said, even you live a long life, you cannot exhaust all the knowledge. Okay, the vigorous of the youth cannot perform all the ceremonial ritual. Okay, ritual is also Confucius' important teaching, right? He said, there's so many rituals. How are you going to, even the young people cannot perform all these rituals. So music also important for Confucius. So he said, even the rich cannot afford the music performance. So Confucius teach this weak art to mislead the ruler and promote music to spoil the people. Their doctrine are not needed of the time. Their teaching cannot educate the people. So that's a sharp criticize on Confucianism. So finally, I want to back to my theory to answer previous question about, I think it's Mark's question about does Mohist is developed by Mozi or not? So the answer is no. In my own way, is this. Okay, we know Mozi criticized Confucius, so he exists around this time. But I lay out, the reason I lay out chronically, okay, the timeline of different philosophy, you can see on the first period, right? We talk about Dao De Jing, Confucius, and the Mozi. I talk about the early part of Mozi. Basically, they are teaching, okay, it's like a teacher teaching student. But after a few years in the warring state, you start have a debate. You can see in Mencius is debate. Hui Shi, okay, Zhuangzi, they all good debater, okay. Gong Sun Long, they all good debater. And in a few weeks, we are going to talk about another Confucianism, okay, Confucianist or Confucius scholar, Xunzi. He believes human nature is bad. Okay, another legalism, Han Feizi. Okay, he talk about reward and the punishment. So they don't write the dialogue or debate anymore. They just write modern days essay. Okay, they open this statement, say human nature is bad, the good people are fake. Okay, they give all the example and then argue, then draw a conclusion. Very modern time essay on that. So from the timeline, you can see the development. I think that probably true for all culture. Because at the beginning, people just talk, teach. And when the cultural societies become mature, they have many schools, then people start to debate. Okay. Finally, they put in the writing or put in the essay to right thing. So you can see same developer in Greek, right? At beginning, if we talk about Parmenides or Heraclitus, what they have is a poem. Okay, they write poetry. Okay, kind of teaching. Okay, okay. Then Socrates, okay, start to argue. Okay, he didn't write, but Plato put in the writing or dialogue. He didn't write essay. But after that, Aristotle didn't write dialogue. He started to put the essay on that, or book by book, as modern day philosophical treaty like this. Same situation in China. Also start from poetry, okay, or teaching, and go to debate, argument, then finally to write an essay. So you can see here, this kind of technique of debating issues exist around this time, right? During this time, the time of people debating each other. So for this reason, I believe the later Mohism is belong to the later time. It's really true. It's later, not the original Mohism. So I hope I make it clear for today's logic. If you hope to learn logic, and probably I don't today, the purpose is not to teach logic, but purpose is to know how the ancient Chinese think. And this school is very different than others because they almost not touch the ancient sage like other philosophy, right? A lot of other philosophers always talk about ancient sage, talking about that's the good example, that's the wrong example, okay? And the basics, they argue everything from the pure logic. Well, should I say pure logic, or we can say it's a hypothetical example to argue. That's a different way of argument. So to bring to you different flavor. So I will close here today, and then let's open up for question, comment for today. Yeah. Okay, Srivastava, please, and Joe.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Jason. It was quite informative. Learned quite a bit. I've had a question regarding philosophy being expansionist. When you mentioned learning, and then the stress on discipline, on disciplinary measures, on self-regulation being very heavy. So I wonder, is it the morphing and the is it the morphing of the individual that is stressed from the outside? Through stress from outside, the individual becomes a certain way and follows rules and regulations, or does expansion come from within? Is like expansion of consciousness, like usually there's a spiritual backdrop when expansion occurs. So, and when it's very heavy in the mental sphere, it becomes limited.
Okay, so that's a focus because a different school could be different way, right? So I just give a quick example. Focus on the Chinese philosophy, ancient Chinese philosophy. In the few weeks, we will talk about legalism. Okay, legalism very clear is from outside. Okay, because they only talk about law. Okay, reward and the punishment. So different. And the Han Feizi even give a clear example. Okay, talk about a kid, okay, he's doing something bad. Okay, the teacher told him it's no use. Parents warn him, no use. Friend advise him, no use. Until the government comes, say, I will punish you. Then he listen. Okay, so that's totally from outside. Xunzi, he also will deal. That's a Confucian school. Okay, he's talking about human nature is bad. So but how about the good people? Oh, they fake. Why they fake? Because they learn. So this kind of between outside and the inside, because you learn, then you become good. So that's assume his idea. Everybody born as evil, okay? But you study, then you become a good person, okay? So if you don't study, then you're a bad person. So that's his idea. So encourage people to study. I'm not sure you will say from inside from outside. Confucius will be very inside, right? Because he talk about ren, benevolence. You should have love people, blah, blah, blah. This one is this one. today's subject, Mohism, okay, different because you missed the previous presentation. He talked about this issue. Okay.
Because there's real transformation, which happens for good. And then there's transformation, which is molded, which only stays for a little bit. And then the person is actually, like you said, like stress from outside. Someone is scared. Like if the trigger is fear, I'm scared of my parents. So, and then it's like, oh,
well,
I'm this, so I don't reveal my authentic self. So I hide that part of myself. The problem with this is it actually happens. I know, like, because I'm mixed, mostly from East India, like, and even it's predominantly very similar, and it results in, you know, society not really being galvanized, you know, and whereas if it's more open and if it's more a true transformation, then it's like.
Yeah, I got your question, but I probably don't have an answer on that because I will say from school to school, from people to people, okay. And then if you go to religion, that's another thing we are going to talk about. So that's the thing. And I think the purpose here, we want to know how does other people think, right? So that you can choose what you decide what you need to do. Joe and Mark. Joe, please.
Yeah, just to really quickly, I'm not going to go into that, but just whether transformation happens externally or internally. That's the question, I guess. About 100 different ways to answer that. Anyway, the question that I have is that, you know, we covered the logic and how it applied to the ethics. So I guess my question would be, what were their metaphysics? In a sense, because, you know, that's kind of the missing piece. Not only that, it's like, how does the world hang together for them is really kind of an important part to cover.
I think you need to wait for formal section on chapter 15.
Oh, come on.
Because that's the subject the Chinese are not interested. Well, we should not say not interested. Okay, because there's no okay, Confucius famously said, okay, if you don't know this life, how can you know the next life? So means, and he also said, I don't teach, okay, thing about ghost, okay, and something. So they don't have this one. If we want to say metaphysics, Tao Te Ching may have some, right? They talk about beginning, but it's very vague. Zhuangzi has some, okay, but not very logical. It just talk about when you die, you become part of this world, okay, so you don't have to be afraid of death. That's a way to think about it. The real so-called Western concept of metaphysics, you have to put in the Yin-Yang school. Okay, we will teach in Yin-Yang school basics on Confucian metaphysics. Okay, that's in chapter 15. Okay, Confucian basics is go from the book of change, I Ching, and all the way through. Okay, and the Confucian put on that. And to the later time, about 13th century, the movement of Neo-Confucianism, they make it much clearer because they learn from Buddhism. Okay, so in a way, if you want to compare to the Western philosophy, the metaphysics is the part people are not so interested. And for Mohism, if you want to say metaphysics, there's a lot of part in text talking about ghost. I don't know you want to consider.
But it's more, you know, I'm thinking it in terms of just in the sense that how the explanations that fill in the gaps. So the idea that something like, again, like Epicurus, essentially, they have the idea that there is a God, but it's not an intervening God, which is a very different philosophical approach than even if you were to say we're in a living universe, the logos, and everything were cause and effect. And then you get into ideas of will that really are underpinning, like, so even the ability to change is actually comes into question. And that's why I think that, you know, even your ethics, to what degree can you even love, right? To what degree can you even, are things, determined or not? That's why I see it as they may not care, but there has to be something underpinning that on how the world fits together.
Yeah, okay, so let's focus on Mohism. Mohism talking about ghost, but the ghost is the only thing to do is revenge. So if you do something bad, okay, and the person die, become the ghost, they will revenge. Okay, so that's if you want to call this metaphysics. They have the story. They put a lot of
Definitely intervening at that point.
yeah, that's the way. So back to the question about the Srivida's question about from outside, from inside. Mohists had this argument. He talked about I think 4 levels, right? The ghost will revenge you, and your first is kind of buying insurance, right? Because I treat you well, and I know one day you will treat me well. That's kind of insurance. Another way is if I don't do good thing, the ghost or the spirit will punish me, okay? Or heaven will punish me. That's the second layer. Another layer is the government or make a law to punish the bad people, and you are afraid of punishment, you will not do that. That's Mohism, Mohist logic about make sure everybody doing good. Okay, so ghosts play the role of not religious role. It ghosts play the role for reward and the punishment.
Yeah, that's like because even if we get into illegalism, the ideas and how that relates to Taoism, in a way, is actually kind of that would be almost its way of kind of explaining the world. Although it's mentioning, it considers a human nature to be essentially need to be changed from the external.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. It's interesting that you brought up Moza and ghosts because I actually have that chapter open and I was reading it the other day. But first, I want to make a general comment about metaphysics and Chinese philosophy. I think I agree generally with Jason that it's not as much of an issue as it is in Indian, Persian, and Greek philosophy, and that's a real dividing point. And in Indian, Greek, and Persian philosophy, you have this real sense of dualism between matter and spirit, and you don't really have that in Chinese philosophy.
Right.
Maybe there's little hints of it in Mozi and another guy, Wang Chun, I think. But you don't really see that very much. Although there is some common metaphysical basis, which I don't know if Jason's talked about this before. There's the Wuxing system, which I think is pretty broadly accepted, and the idea of the transformation of elements and stuff like that. So there is some metaphysics, but it's not really in dispute like it is in India, Persia, and Greece. So it's not really a source of debate. So the question that I had for Jason,
So
I was just reading this chapter.
What does that mean about
for
its implications for will?
Yeah, that's a big question. I'm going to let Jason handle that. I want to ask Jason a question about
Okay,
right,
because that's really where I was going with that.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just reading this chapter the other day about the explaining ghosts, and I didn't know this about Mozart. I thought it was really interesting, particularly because religion, for the most part, is so separate from Chinese philosophy, except possibly with religious Taoism. It's like really off to the side. But Mozart kind of makes an appeal to the supernatural as kind of an enforcing mechanism in the explaining ghosts for good behavior, which seems kind of parallel to the way that the spiritual world acts in Zoroastrianism, Christianity, etc. And you didn't mention any of that in the logic, so I was wondering, was that abandoned by later Mohists?
Mention what?
I didn't hear you mention ghosts until just now when you were talking about the logic of the Mohists.
Oh no, that belong to the early time.
Right.
Okay.
So they abandoned that later. They didn't talk about that.
No. They didn't abandon it. They didn't abandon. They still this. Okay. They still exist. That exists in the whole book. Okay. Okay. Just the early part, and you can see this logic has no conflicts. It's compatible with the ghost existence of ghosts. Okay. That's nothing wrong to coexistence. Okay. So the logic basis is used to argue against other school and defend their own philosophy on another layer of protection. Let's put it this way. They have the goals to protect them, and they also have the logic to defend.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thank you everyone, and then we're doing well for the timing, and then I did see today is very different subject for today, and then next week we talk about Bhagavad Gita. We're going to review chapters 4 to 6, and then week after I'm going to continue on chapter 12, which is about Yin Yang School. Okay, that's a little bit about the metaphysics. Okay, but it's not the origin of the universe yet. Okay, so see you next time.
Yeah,
Okay, so
thanks.
this time, okay, yeah, you have the last word.
I just had a quick question, Jason, because since I'm a little bit of a novice, even though I am a history buff in terms of philosophy, I'm so-so. I was wondering where the nexus of Chinese history, like what is the building blocks? Is it shamanic Buddhism from Genghis Khan? Is it what is it like all these schools of thought? Like where does it come from? What's the nexus? Is
Okay.
it just come?
Yeah, I think you missed the first chapter. Okay. Okay. So, but make it simple. Okay. That's all native born. Okay. So I think it's just like other culture, Greek or something. It's all grown up from the agricultural environment. Okay. And they have some certain tradition. And then later I show the map, right? The school, especially when before was one feudal system, then break up to the 200 different states, then they start to fight each other. Everybody knows that's wrong. And then they try to resolve the problem. That's why they come with all different philosophy. If you put this one in the background, right, you have the many states, they fight each other, and they know in the ancient time, okay, they were told in ancient times it was a peaceful time. Then I think a lot of people start to think of the solution. So they all told to some solution to make a peaceful world. Okay. So
I mean, with that being said, how much of philosophy is just the mental pedigree of the people, and how much of it is just the natural course of history and the conditioning and the trauma that they've gone through? The pits,
well, I think
troubles.
well, that's depend on how you understand. Everybody could be different way. I believe Chinese philosophy, same as Greek philosophy, it come out from the necessity. That's I believe.
Yes.
You may disagree, but I think all this one come out necessity. But when they become mature, they have the division of work. Some people will focus more on the politics. Some people will focus on the law. Some people will on ethics. Some people are on the logic. So that's come for the different flavor. Let's put it this way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, so I think that's for today. And then thank you, everyone. And then we'll see you next week. Okay, bye.